Welcome to Sleepy Philosophy, where we explore life's biggest questions, one gentle thought at a time. Tonight, we're embarking on a quiet journey into one of the most profound questions humans have ever asked. Not where does the universe end? Not how consciousness works, but something much more immediate, much more personal. What makes your life worth living? What gives it meaning when everything else feels uncertain? It's a question that sounds almost too big for a Tuesday evening, doesn't it? But here's the thing about meaning. It doesn't always announce itself with fanfare or grand revelations. Sometimes it whispers to us in the smallest moments, the warmth of a conversation that matters, the satisfaction of work that feels worthwhile, the quiet knowledge that somehow, in some way, you belong here. Before we begin, I'd love to know where you're listening from tonight. Are you curled up in bed somewhere in Berlin, watching the city lights flicker outside your window? Maybe you're in a cozy apartment in Toronto, wrapped in your favourite blanket, with a cup of tea growing cold on the nightstand. Wherever you are, whatever time it is, I hope you're comfortable and ready to drift into some thoughtful reflection. If you find these philosophical explorations helpful for your evening wind down, a like and subscribe really does help this little corner of the internet grow. And to those of you who've already joined our Sleepy Philosophical community, thank you. Your presence here makes these late-night conversations feel less like talking to the void and more like sharing thoughts with friends. Now, I should warn you, tonight's topic might be so compelling that it keeps you awake pondering rather than drifting off to sleep. But if that happens, at least you'll have spent your wakeful hours contemplating one of the most important questions you can ask yourself. A small price to pay for an evening of meaningful reflection. So let's begin, shall we? What is meaning? And why does it seem so elusive sometimes, yet so essential always? There was a man who understood meaning in a way most of us never will, and hopefully never have to. His name was Viktor Frankl, and his story begins in the darkest chapter of human history. Not because darkness defines meaning, but because sometimes it takes the absolute absence of light to help us understand what illumination really looks like. Frankl was a psychiatrist, a thinker, a man who spent his days helping others navigate the complexities of the human mind. But in 1942, his world collapsed. He was arrested by the Nazis, separated from his wife, and sent to a concentration camp. Everything that might have given his life meaning in the conventional sense was stripped away. His profession, his freedom, his family, his manuscripts, his future plans, all gone. Most of us have never faced anything close to such complete devastation. Yet there's something universally recognizable in that moment of loss, isn't there? Perhaps you felt it in smaller ways. The job that defined you suddenly ends. A relationship you thought would last forever crumbles. Plans you've built your hopes around fall apart without warning. That hollow feeling when the things you thought gave your life meaning simply vanish. What would you do in such circumstances? How would you find reason to continue when everything that seemed to matter has been taken away? This is where Frankl's story becomes extraordinary, not because of what happened to him, but because of what he discovered within himself. In the concentration camps, stripped of everything external that might provide meaning, he began to observe something remarkable. Some prisoners facing the same horrific conditions maintained an inner strength that seemed impossible. Others, despite being physically healthier, simply gave up. The difference, he realized, wasn't in their circumstances. Everyone faced the same brutality, the same deprivation, the same uncertainty. The difference was in how they understood their situation. Those who survived with their humanity intact had found something that couldn't be taken from them, a reason to endure that existed beyond their immediate suffering. Frankl called this insight logotherapy, from the Greek word logos, meaning purpose or reason. But we don't need fancy terminology to understand what he discovered. He found that meaning isn't something we stumble upon, or that gets handed to us. It's something we create, something we choose, something we discover by deciding that our existence matters, even when, especially when, everything external suggests otherwise. Now let's pause here for a moment. You might be thinking, this is all very profound, but I'm not facing anything nearly so dramatic. I'm just trying to figure out why I feel restless, why my daily routine feels hollow, why I sometimes lie awake wondering if any of this really matters. And that's exactly why Frankl's insights are so valuable. Because meaning isn't just about surviving extreme circumstances, it's about thriving in ordinary ones. Think through your phone for a few minutes, about your typical day. You wake up, maybe scroll, get ready, go to work or school, interact with people, accomplish tasks, come home, eat dinner, watch something, go to sleep, repeat. When you lay it out like that, it can seem pretty mechanical, can't it? Just a series of actions and reactions, habits and obligations. But here's what Frankl understood. Within that seemingly ordinary sequence of events, there are countless opportunities for meaning. Not meaning imposed from outside, not meaning that depends on achieving something spectacular, but meaning that emerges when we engage with our lives intentionally, when we recognize that how we show up matters. He identified 3 primary sources of meaning, 3 ways we can transform even the most routine existence into something purposeful. The first is what he called creative values. This is meaning we find through what we give to the world. Your work, your relationships, your contributions, the problems you solve, the beauty you create, the help you offer. But here's the gentle revolution in this idea. Creative values don't require you to be an artist or an entrepreneur or someone who changes the world on a grand scale. They simply require you to engage authentically with whatever role you find yourself in. The teacher who truly sees each student as an individual, the accountant who takes pride in helping people navigate their finances, the parent who listens carefully to their child's seemingly random observations about clouds or caterpillars. Creative values are about bringing your full attention and care to whatever you're doing, treating it as if it matters because you're the one doing it. When you approach your daily activities this way, even mundane tasks begin to carry weight. You're not just going through motions anymore. You're participating in something larger than yourself. The second source of meaning Frankl identified is experiential values. This is meaning we find through what we take from the world. The beauty we witness, the love we receive, the truth we encounter, the moments of connection and wonder that remind us why being alive is extraordinary. This isn't about consuming experiences like items on a bucket list. It's about cultivating the capacity to be moved by what's already around you. The way afternoon light falls across your living room, the sound of someone you care about laughing genuinely, the satisfaction of learning something new, even if it's small, the quiet pleasure of reading words that perfectly capture something you've felt but never been able to express. Experiential values ask us to become students of our own lives, to pay attention, to receive the gifts that existence offers us daily. They require a kind of openness, a willingness to be affected by beauty and truth, and connection wherever we find them. But it was the third source of meaning that became the cornerstone of Frankl's philosophy, especially after his experiences in the camps. He called them attitudinal values. This is meaning we find through the stance we take toward unavoidable suffering, the way we choose to face difficulties that cannot be changed or escaped. Now, this isn't about glorifying suffering or suggesting that hardship is somehow good for us. Rather, it's recognizing that pain, loss, frustration, and disappointment are inevitable parts of human existence. We will all face circumstances we didn't choose and cannot control. The question becomes, how do we meet these experiences? What attitude do we bring to the challenges that life presents? Attitudinal values are perhaps the most powerful source of meaning because they're the most completely within our control. You cannot always control what happens to you, but you can always choose how you respond. This choice, this freedom to determine your own attitude, regardless of external circumstances, is what Frankl considered the last human freedom, the one thing that can never be taken from you. In the concentration camps, he watched people demonstrate this freedom in ways both large and small, sharing their meager bread rations with others, maintaining dignity in degrading circumstances, comforting fellow prisoners despite their own despair, holding on to hope, not because their situation was hopeful, but because hope was a choice they refused to surrender. These acts didn't change their external circumstances, but they transformed the meaning of those circumstances. Suffering became an opportunity to demonstrate courage. Limitation became a canvas for creativity. Despair became the backdrop against which small acts of love and defiance shone even brighter. You might be wondering how this applies to your own life, which hopefully bears no resemblance to such extreme conditions. But consider the smaller sufferings and limitations you face, the job that frustrates you but pays the bills, the relationship that requires more patience than you sometimes feel you have, the health challenge that won't resolve as quickly as you'd like, the dream that seems increasingly unlikely to materialize. These situations offer opportunities for attitudinal values, not by pretending they're not difficult, but by choosing how you'll meet the difficulty. Will you approach your frustrating job with resentment, or can you find ways to bring excellence and kindness to it while looking for better opportunities? Will you let your challenging relationship consume you with bitterness, or can you practice compassion while setting healthy boundaries? This isn't about forcing positivity or denying legitimate feelings. It's about recognizing that within every difficult situation, you retain the power to choose your response. And that choice, that exercise of your fundamental freedom, becomes a source of meaning in itself. Frankl discovered that meaning doesn't depend on happiness, success, comfort, or even hope in the conventional sense. It depends on engagement, on the decision to participate fully in your own existence, regardless of the circumstances. It emerges when you stop asking, "What can life give me?" and start asking, "What can I give to life?" This shift in perspective is subtle but revolutionary. Instead of waiting for meaning to arrive from outside, you begin creating it from within. Instead of measuring your worth by external achievements or circumstances, you ground it in your daily choices to show up with integrity, attention, and care. As we settle deeper into this exploration, let your mind wander through your own life. Where do you already experience glimmers of meaning? What activities, relationships, or moments make you feel most alive and engaged? What values do you express through your daily choices, even when no one is watching? And perhaps more importantly, where do you notice meaning's absence? What parts of your life feel mechanical or empty? What circumstances do you find yourself resisting or resenting? These aren't problems to be solved immediately, but rather invitations to explore how you might bring more intentionality to these areas. Tonight, as you drift towards sleep, consider this gentle possibility. Meaning isn't a treasure you have to hunt for in distant places or extraordinary circumstances. It's not a prize you earn through achievement or a gift you receive from others. It's something much more accessible and much more powerful. It's the natural result of engaging authentically with whatever life presents to you moment by moment, choice by choice. The search for meaning isn't a destination you arrive at. It's a way of traveling, a quality of attention you bring to the journey itself. And that journey continues tomorrow, in the most ordinary and extraordinary moments of your perfectly imperfect, beautifully human existence. There's something deeply comforting about Frankl's approach to meaning, isn't there? It doesn't demand that you become someone extraordinary or accomplish something world-changing. It simply asks you to become more fully yourself, more present to your own experience, more intentional about how you engage with the life you already have. But let's be honest for a moment. This sounds beautiful in theory, but what does it actually look like in practice? How do you find meaning when you're stuck in traffic on a Tuesday morning? When your boss is unreasonable? When your bank account is smaller than you'd like? When the news feels overwhelming? When you're tired and the dishes still need washing? This is where Frankl's insights become not just philosophical, but practical. He understood that meaning doesn't require perfect conditions or ideal circumstances. In fact, it often emerges most clearly in the gaps between what we hoped for and what we actually encounter. Let me share something that might surprise you. Frankl believed that the question, "What is the meaning of life?" is actually backwards. Life isn't asking us to find some universal, predetermined meaning. Instead, life is constantly asking us questions, and meaning emerges through our answers. Every situation you encounter is life asking you something. Your difficult colleague is asking how you'll choose to respond to challenging personalities. Your financial stress is asking what values you'll prioritize when resources are limited. Your aging parent is asking what kind of love you'll offer when someone needs your care. Your creative dreams are asking whether you'll risk vulnerability for the chance to express something authentic. The meaning isn't in having easy answers to these questions. It's in the quality of engagement you bring to wrestling with them. It's in showing up thoughtfully, choosing your responses rather than simply reacting, treating each challenge as an opportunity to clarify who you want to be. Consider this gentle reframe. Instead of feeling burdened by life's constant demands and questions, what if you began to see them as invitations? Invitations to practice patience, creativity, courage, compassion. Invitations to discover capacities within yourself that might otherwise remain dormant. The mother who finds meaning in sleepless nights with a sick child isn't enjoying the exhaustion. She's choosing to meet the situation with love rather than resentment. The student who finds meaning in difficult coursework isn't thrilled by the struggle. They're choosing to engage with challenges as opportunities for growth rather than obstacles to happiness. This brings us to another of Frankl's profound insights. He noticed that people who were most resilient, most capable of finding meaning even in difficult circumstances, shared a particular characteristic. They had what he called self-transcendence. They were oriented not just toward their own comfort and success, but toward something beyond themselves. Now, before you worry that this requires some kind of saintly selflessness, let me reassure you, self-transcendence doesn't mean ignoring your own needs or sacrificing yourself for others. It simply means recognizing that you're part of something larger, that your actions ripple outward, that your well-being is connected to the well-being of others. You experience this naturally in moments when you're completely absorbed in something that matters to you. When you're helping a friend through a difficult time, you're not thinking about yourself. When you're engaged in work that feels important, you lose track of time. When you're creating something beautiful or solving a meaningful problem, your usual self-consciousness fades away. In these moments, you're practicing self-transcendence without even realizing it. You're stepping outside the narrow circle of your immediate concerns and participating in something larger. And paradoxically, this is often when you feel most alive, most like yourself, most connected to a sense of purpose. Frankl observed that meaning and happiness are related but not identical. In fact, pursuing happiness directly often leads to frustration, while pursuing meaning often leads to a deeper satisfaction that includes but transcends momentary happiness. Think about the experiences in your life that you remember as most meaningful. Were they always pleasant in the moment? The birth of a child is meaningful, but it's also exhausting and sometimes frightening. Learning a new skill is meaningful, but it often involves frustration and failure. Caring for someone you love through illness is meaningful, but it's rarely easy or comfortable. The meaning doesn't come from the pleasure of these experiences. It comes from the sense that you're engaged in something worthwhile, something that expresses your values and contributes to what matters most to you. This is liberating, isn't it? It means you don't have to wait for ideal conditions to live meaningfully. You don't need to feel happy or confident or successful. You just need to be willing to engage authentically with whatever you're facing right now. But Frankl also understood something crucial about human nature. We don't create meaning in isolation. While the choice to live meaningfully is ultimately personal, meaning itself emerges through our connections with others, our contributions to community, our participation in something larger than our individual concerns. This is why isolation is so devastating to the human spirit, and why periods of disconnection often coincide with feelings of meaninglessness. We're social creatures, evolved to find purpose through our relationships and contributions to the group. Even introverts, even those who need significant solitude, derive meaning partly from their connections with others. Consider how different it feels to accomplish something alone versus sharing that accomplishment with someone who understands its significance to you. Or how much more meaningful work becomes when you can see how it contributes to something you care about, how it serves others or advances causes that matter. This doesn't mean your worth depends on others' approval or that you should sacrifice your authenticity to belong. Rather, it suggests that meaning often emerges at the intersection of personal authenticity and genuine contribution. When you can be truly yourself while also serving something beyond yourself, that's where the deepest satisfaction often lies. Frankl spoke about responsibility as a companion to freedom. You're free to choose your attitude and response to any situation, but with that, freedom comes the responsibility to choose thoughtfully, to consider not just what serves you in the moment, but what serves the larger web of relationships and values you're part of. This responsibility isn't a burden. It's actually the source of dignity and meaning. When you recognize that your choices matter, that how you show up affects not just your own experience, but ripples outward to touch others, your daily decisions gain weight and significance. The way you listen to a friend who's struggling matters. The effort you put into work that might seem mundane matters. The patience you show to a cashier who's having a difficult day matters. These aren't grand gestures, but they're meaningful ones. They're expressions of your values, contributions to the kind of world you want to live in. As you lie there tonight, perhaps feeling the day's tensions beginning to release from your shoulders, consider this invitation. You don't need to solve the question of life's meaning like a puzzle with a single correct answer. Instead, you can begin living more meaningfully by bringing increased awareness and intentionality to the choices you're already making. Tomorrow offers countless small opportunities to practice what Frankl discovered. Moments to create something worthwhile, to experience beauty or connection, to meet challenges with grace rather than reactivity. None of these require you to become a different person or achieve extraordinary things. They simply ask you to become more fully present to the person you already are and the life you're already living. The search for meaning isn't a project you complete, but a quality of engagement you cultivate. It's less like solving a problem and more like tending a garden. You plant seeds through your daily choices, water them with attention and care, and trust that something beautiful will grow, even if you can't predict exactly what form it will take. And here's perhaps the most gentle truth of all. You don't have to figure this out perfectly or immediately. Meaning unfolds gradually, through practice and reflection, through trial and error, through the accumulated wisdom of paying attention to what brings life and what drains it away. Some days you'll feel deeply connected to purpose and direction. Other days you'll feel lost or uncertain. Both are part of the human experience. The goal isn't to eliminate the uncertainty, but to remain engaged even when you don't have all the answers. Frankl's own life exemplified this. Even after his profound insights about meaning, he continued to face challenges, losses, and periods of doubt. But he had learned something that sustained him through all of it. He had discovered that meaning isn't a destination you reach, but a way of traveling, a quality of presence you bring to whatever journey you find yourself on. Tonight, as your breathing deepens and your thoughts begin to quiet, rest in this possibility. The life you're living right now, with all its imperfections and uncertainties, is already rich with potential meaning. Not meaning you have to create from nothing, but meaning you can uncover by bringing more awareness, intention, and care to what's already present. Your ordinary Tuesday contains the same opportunities for meaning that sustained Frankl through extraordinary circumstances. The difference lies not in the magnitude of the situation, but in the quality of attention and choice you bring to it. And that quality, that capacity for meaningful engagement, is something you can cultivate and strengthen with practice. The path toward meaning isn't always linear, is it? Sometimes you'll find yourself taking what feels like a step backward, questioning choices you thought were settled, feeling uncertain about directions that once seemed clear. Frankl understood this too. He knew that meaning isn't a permanent state you achieve and then maintain effortlessly. It's more like a river that sometimes flows smoothly and sometimes encounters rapids, but always keeps moving forward. In his later years, after he'd become famous for his insights about meaning and purpose, Frankl continued to wrestle with these questions in his own life. He remarried, rebuilt his career, wrote books, travelled the world sharing his discoveries. But he never claimed to have found some final answer that eliminated all doubt or struggle. Instead, he remained curious, open to learning, willing to let his understanding deepen and evolve. There's something refreshing about this, don't you think? In a world that often promises quick fixes and definitive solutions, Frankl's approach is more honest about the nature of human experience. He suggests that the search for meaning is itself meaningful, that the questions matter as much as any answers we might find. This brings us to what might be the most practical aspect of Frankl's philosophy. He developed specific techniques that anyone can use to cultivate a more meaningful existence. These aren't complex therapeutic interventions requiring years of training. They're simple practices that can be woven into ordinary daily life. The first is what he called de-reflection. This is the practice of shifting your attention away from yourself and your own concerns towards something or someone else. When you're stuck in rumination, when you're caught in cycles of worry or self-doubt, the most direct path out isn't through more thinking about your problems. It's through engaging with something beyond those problems. You might recognize this from your own experience. When you're feeling anxious or depressed, sometimes the most helpful thing you can do is call a friend who needs support, volunteer for a cause you care about, or simply focus completely on a task that requires your full attention. Not because you're avoiding your feelings, but because you're remembering that you exist in relationship to a larger world. De-reflection isn't about denial or distraction. It's about perspective. When you zoom out from your immediate concerns and reconnect with your role in the broader web of existence, your problems don't disappear, but they often become more manageable. They find their proper proportion within the larger story of your life. The second technique Frankl developed was paradoxical intention. This involves deliberately focusing on or even exaggerating the very thing you're trying to avoid. If you're anxious about not being able to fall asleep, you might try to stay awake as long as possible. If you're worried about saying something foolish in a social situation, you might intentionally plan to say something silly. This works because it interrupts the cycle of anticipatory anxiety that often makes problems worse than they need to be. When you stop fighting against your fears and instead approach them with curiosity or even humor, they often lose their power over you. But beyond these specific techniques, Frankl's most important contribution might be his insight about temporal perspective. He noticed that people who found meaning in difficult circumstances had the ability to imagine themselves in the future, looking back on their current situation with wisdom and compassion. Try this for a moment. Think about something in your life right now that feels challenging or uncertain. Now imagine yourself 5 years from now, having navigated through this situation and gained perspective from the experience. What would that future version of yourself want to tell you about this current challenge? What would they recognize about this situation that you might be missing right now? This isn't about minimizing your current difficulties or pretending they don't matter. It's about placing them within the larger context of your ongoing life story. Most of the things that feel overwhelming in the moment become chapters in a longer narrative, episodes that contribute to your growth and understanding even when they're difficult to endure. Frankl often spoke about the tragic optimism that characterizes a meaningful life. This isn't blind positivity or the denial of suffering. It's the recognition that even tragic circumstances can become the foundation for meaning, growth, and service to others. You see this in people who channel their losses into helping others avoid similar pain. The parent who loses a child to drunk driving and becomes an advocate for safer roads. The person who overcomes addiction and dedicates themselves to helping others find recovery. The survivor of trauma who becomes a counselor or educator. These individuals don't find meaning despite their suffering, but through their decision to let that suffering inform their contribution to the world. They transform their pain into purpose, their wounds into wisdom that can serve others. But tragic optimism doesn't require dramatic gestures or public platforms. It can be as simple as letting your struggles make you more compassionate toward others who are struggling, allowing your mistakes to make you less judgmental and more forgiving, using your experience of loneliness to recognize and reach out to others who might be isolated. Every difficulty you face offers this possibility, not the guarantee that something good will come from it, but the opportunity to create something meaningful through how you choose to respond to it. This choice is always available, even in circumstances that seem to offer no good options. Consider the concept of finite meaning versus infinite meaning. Finite meaning comes from specific goals, achievements, or experiences. Getting the promotion, finishing the degree, taking the dream vacation, finding the perfect relationship. These sources of meaning are important and valuable, but they're also temporary and conditional. Infinite meaning comes from your ongoing engagement with values and purposes that transcend any particular outcome. The commitment to treating others with kindness, regardless of how they treat you. The dedication to learning and growing throughout your lifetime. The choice to contribute to something larger than yourself in whatever way you can. Finite meanings give texture and direction to your life, but infinite meanings provide the foundation that sustains you through all of life's inevitable changes and losses. When you ground yourself in infinite meanings, you're less dependent on external circumstances for your sense of purpose and well-being. This doesn't mean abandoning goals or achievements. It means holding them lightly, pursuing them with energy, while recognizing that your worth and meaning don't depend on attaining them. It means finding satisfaction in the pursuit itself, in the person you become through striving toward what matters to you. Frankl believed that every person has a unique meaning to fulfill, a particular contribution that only they can make. This isn't about having a grand destiny or special calling. It's about recognizing that your combination of experiences, perspectives, talents, and circumstances creates opportunities for meaning that are uniquely yours. The shy person who notices others who are overlooked. The person who's experienced financial hardship and can relate to others facing similar challenges. The individual who's learned to find joy in simple pleasures and can model that for others, caught up in complexity. The one who's made mistakes and found redemption, offering hope to those still struggling with guilt or shame. Your specific life experience, including its difficulties and limitations, prepares you to contribute something distinctive to the world. Not better or worse than what others offer, just different. The meaning you create through your particular way of being in the world is irreplaceable. This understanding can transform how you view your own story. Instead of seeing your struggles as obstacles to meaning, you begin to recognize them as part of what qualifies you to offer something valuable to others. Your wounds become sources of wisdom. Your limitations become invitations to creativity. Your failures become foundations for empathy. But perhaps the most profound aspect of Frankl's approach is his insight about death and meaning. Rather than seeing mortality as something that makes life meaningless, he argued that it's precisely because life is finite that our choices matter so intensely. If you had infinite time, you could postpone meaningful action indefinitely. But because your days are numbered, because this particular combination of opportunities and relationships and possibilities will never exist again, your decisions carry weight. The love you offer today matters because you won't have this exact chance to offer it again. The kindness you show, the beauty you create, the problems you solve, all of these gain significance from their irreplaceability. This isn't meant to create urgency or anxiety about making every moment count. Rather, it's an invitation to presence, to recognizing the preciousness of ordinary moments. The conversation you're having with your friend tonight will never happen again in quite this way. The sunset you're watching is unique among all the sunsets that have ever been or will be. The hug you give, the meal you share, the book you read, all of these are unrepeatable experiences. When you truly grasp this temporal uniqueness, it becomes easier to find meaning in the present moment, rather than always looking towards some future achievement or past golden age. The life you're living right now is the only one you have, and it's already full of opportunities for meaning if you're willing to see them. Frankl noticed that people who live meaningfully share certain characteristics. They're willing to take responsibility for their choices rather than blaming circumstances or other people for their dissatisfaction. They're oriented toward growth and learning rather than comfort and security. They maintain hope, not because they're convinced everything will turn out well, but because they're committed to contributing positively regardless of outcomes. Most importantly, they've learned to find meaning in the process of living itself, not just in achieving particular results. They understand that a meaningful life isn't one where everything goes according to plan, but one where you remain engaged and intentional even when plans change. As you settle deeper into the quiet of this evening, let these ideas wash over you gently. You don't need to implement everything at once or transform your entire approach to life overnight. Meaning develops gradually through small choices and subtle shifts in perspective. Tomorrow offers fresh opportunities to practice what we've been exploring. Moments to create something worthwhile, to experience beauty or connection, to meet challenges with grace rather than reactivity. These opportunities don't require you to become someone extraordinary. They simply ask you to become more present to the ordinary extraordinariness of being human. The search for meaning isn't a problem to be solved, but a way of living to be cultivated. It's less about finding the right answers, and more about living the important questions with increasing depth and authenticity. And that living, that engagement with what matters most, can begin right now, in this moment, with whatever circumstances currently surround you. Your life already contains everything necessary for meaning. Not meaning that depends on perfect conditions or ideal outcomes, but meaning that emerges through your willingness to show up thoughtfully, to choose responsibly, to remain open to growth and service and love, even when the path forward isn't entirely clear. This is the gentle revolution that Frankl discovered and shared with the world. Meaning isn't something you have to earn or achieve or find in distant places. It's something you can create and discover and live into, starting exactly where you are, with exactly what you have, in this perfectly imperfect moment of your beautifully human existence. Rest here for a moment and consider something Frankl discovered that might surprise you. He found that the people who struggled most with meaninglessness weren't necessarily those facing the greatest hardships. Often they were individuals whose basic needs were met, whose lives appeared successful from the outside, but who felt an inexplicable emptiness that material comfort couldn't fill. He called this the existential vacuum, a kind of inner hollowness that emerges when we have everything we thought we wanted, but still feel fundamentally unsatisfied. You might recognize this feeling, that restless sensation when you've achieved a goal you worked toward for months or years, only to find that the accomplishment feels strangely flat, the promotion that doesn't bring the fulfillment you expected, the relationship that checks all the boxes but somehow leaves you feeling disconnected. This vacuum isn't a sign of ingratitude or personal failure. It's actually a healthy signal that you're ready for something deeper, something more aligned with your authentic self. It's your inner wisdom recognizing that meaning can't be purchased or achieved through external means alone. It has to be cultivated from within, through the quality of engagement you bring to your daily experience. Frankl observed that this existential emptiness often manifests in one of three ways. Sometimes it appears as conformity, where you find yourself going through the motions of what others expect, following paths that society deems successful, but that don't resonate with your deeper values. You wake up one day and realize you've been living someone else's version of a meaningful life, rather than discovering your own. Other times it shows up as total conformity, where the lack of inner direction leads to following whatever trend or authority figure promises to provide meaning from the outside. You might find yourself constantly seeking the next guru, the next system, the next philosophy that will finally give you the answers you're looking for. Most commonly, though, the existential vacuum appears as a vague sense of boredom or restlessness. Life feels repetitive, predictable, somehow smaller than it should be. You have the strange sensation that you're capable of more, meant for something deeper, but you can't quite identify what that something might be. If any of this resonates with you, take heart. Frankl considered the existential vacuum not as a pathology, but as a normal part of human development. It's often the beginning of wisdom, the first stirring of a deeper questioning that can lead to more authentic meaning. The discomfort you feel isn't a problem to be solved quickly, but an invitation to explore more thoughtfully what would truly nourish your soul. This brings us to one of Frankl's most practical insights about how meaning actually develops in our lives. He noticed that meaningful experiences often have a particular structure, a rhythm that you can learn to recognize and cultivate. They begin with attention, deepen through engagement, and culminate in a sense of contribution or connection that extends beyond your immediate self-interest. Think about a moment in your recent past when you felt most alive and purposeful. Perhaps it was helping a friend through a difficult conversation, working on a creative project that absorbed your complete attention, or simply being fully present with someone you love during an ordinary but intimate moment. What was happening in that experience? Most likely, you were completely absorbed in what you were doing. Your usual self-consciousness faded away. You weren't thinking about how you appeared to others or what you should be doing instead. You were simply there, engaged, responsive to what the moment required of you. This quality of attention that characterizes meaningful experiences isn't something you have to manufacture through willpower. It arises naturally when you're engaged with something that genuinely matters to you. The key is learning to recognize what genuinely matters, which often requires quieting the voices that tell you what should matter and listening more carefully to your own inner compass. Frankl suggested a simple but profound practice for developing this recognition. At the end of each day, ask yourself not, what did I accomplish, but what did I contribute? Not what did I gain, but what did I give? Not how did I measure up, but how did I show up? These questions shift your attention from outcome to process, from external validation to internal integrity. They help you notice the moments when you are most authentically yourself, most genuinely engaged, most connected to something larger than your immediate concerns. Over time, this practice of reflection helps you identify patterns. You begin to notice which activities energize you and which drain you, which relationships bring out your best qualities and which leave you feeling diminished, which environments support your growth and which constrain it. This isn't about making dramatic changes overnight. It's about developing the capacity to recognize meaning when it appears and to make small adjustments that align your daily life more closely with what brings you alive. Sometimes this means saying yes to opportunities that scare you a little. Sometimes it means saying no to commitments that no longer serve your growth. But here's something crucial that Frankl understood about this process of alignment. Meaning doesn't always feel comfortable or easy. In fact, some of the most meaningful experiences involve challenge, uncertainty, even temporary discomfort. Learning to distinguish between the discomfort that signals growth and the dissatisfaction that signals misalignment is one of the most valuable skills you can develop. The discomfort of growth feels different from the dissatisfaction of meaninglessness. Growth-related discomfort has a quality of aliveness to it, even when it's difficult. You might feel nervous about taking on a new challenge, but there's also excitement underneath the nervousness. You might feel tired after a day of meaningful work, but it's the good kind of tired that comes from using your capacities fully. Meaninglessness, on the other hand, tends to feel flat, empty, or agitated. It's the dissatisfaction that comes from not being stretched, not being challenged in ways that matter to you. It's the restlessness that emerges when you're capable of more, but not being asked to give it. Learning to read these subtle signals helps you navigate toward more meaning without falling into the trap of thinking that meaningful automatically means easy. Some of the most rewarding experiences in life require you to stretch beyond your comfort zone, to engage with challenges that initially feel overwhelming. Frankl also recognized that meaning often emerges not in isolation, but through our relationships and connections with others. But not all relationships foster meaning equally. The connections that contribute most to your sense of purpose are typically those where you can be authentic, where you're seen and appreciated for who you really are, rather than who you think you should be. These relationships might be with family members, friends, colleagues, or even strangers you encounter briefly but meaningfully. What they have in common is a quality of mutual recognition, a sense that you matter to each other, not just for what you can provide, but for who you are at your core. Cultivating such relationships requires vulnerability, the willingness to be known rather than just liked. It means sharing your real thoughts and feelings, even when they're imperfect or uncertain. It means listening deeply to others, offering your genuine attention rather than waiting for your turn to speak. This kind of authentic connection doesn't happen automatically. It requires intention and practice, but when it does occur, it becomes a powerful source of meaning, a reminder that you're not alone in your journey toward understanding and purpose. Sometimes, the most meaningful connections happen in moments of shared struggle or mutual support. When you help someone through a difficult time, or when someone offers you exactly the understanding you need, these experiences create bonds that transcend ordinary social interaction. They remind you that your individual search for meaning is part of a larger human quest for significance and belonging. Frankl noticed that people who found the deepest meaning in their lives had learned to see their personal struggles and growth as contributions to something larger. Your efforts to live more authentically inspire others to do the same. Your willingness to face challenges with courage gives others permission to be brave. Your journey toward meaning becomes part of the broader human story of growth and awakening. This perspective transforms even your private inner work into a form of service. When you commit to understanding yourself more deeply, to healing your wounds, to developing your capacities, you're not just helping yourself, you're contributing to the collective human project of becoming more conscious, more compassionate, more alive. Think about the people who have influenced you most profoundly. Often they're not individuals who preached at you or tried to convince you of something. They're people who simply lived their values, who embodied a quality of presence or authenticity that inspired you to reach for something similar in your own life. You have the same capacity to influence others, not through what you say, but through how you live. Every time you choose courage over comfort, authenticity over approval, growth over stagnation, you're contributing to a cultural shift toward greater consciousness and meaning. This doesn't require you to become a teacher or leader in any formal sense. It simply asks you to take your own development seriously, to recognize that your personal growth ripples outward in ways you may never fully see or understand. As the evening deepens around you and your thoughts begin to slow, consider this gentle invitation. The search for meaning doesn't require you to solve everything at once or transform your entire life overnight. It asks only for your willingness to pay attention, to engage authentically with whatever presents itself, to remain open to growth and service and love. Tomorrow will bring new opportunities to practice what we've been exploring. Moments to notice what energizes you and what drains you. Chances to choose authenticity over approval, contribution over consumption. Invitations to connect more deeply with others and with the values that matter most to you. These opportunities don't require perfect conditions or ideal circumstances. They're available in the midst of your ordinary life, woven into the fabric of your daily routines and relationships. The meaning you seek isn't hiding in some distant future or exotic location. It's present right here, right now, waiting for you to recognize and embrace it. The path toward meaning isn't always linear or predictable. Sometimes you'll feel crystal clear about your direction and purpose. Other times you'll feel uncertain, questioning choices you thought were settled. Both states are part of the human experience of growth and discovery. What matters isn't having all the answers, but remaining engaged with the questions. What matters isn't achieving some final state of meaning, but continuing to show up authentically to whatever life presents. What matters isn't being perfect, but being present, being real, being willing to learn and grow and contribute in whatever way feels most genuine to you. Frankl's great gift to humanity wasn't a formula for finding meaning, but a reminder that meaning is always possible, always available, always emerging through our choices and connections and contributions. He showed us that even in the darkest circumstances, we retain the freedom to choose our response, and that this freedom is the foundation of human dignity and purpose. Your life, with all its imperfections and uncertainties, contains everything necessary for meaning. Not meaning that depends on achieving particular outcomes or meeting external standards, but meaning that flows from your willingness to engage fully with your own experience, to remain open to growth and service, to choose authenticity and connection over comfort and approval. This is the quiet revolution that begins within each individual who decides to live more consciously, more courageously, more lovingly. It spreads not through argument or persuasion, but through example, through the simple power of one person choosing to show up more fully to their own life and relationships. As you drift towards sleep tonight, rest in the knowledge that this revolution can begin with you, in this moment, through your willingness to remain curious about what it means to live meaningfully. The questions we've explored together don't require immediate answers, just ongoing engagement. The insights don't demand perfect implementation, just sincere practice. Your search for meaning is part of the larger human story of awakening and growth. Every step you take toward greater authenticity and purpose contributes to something beyond your individual life. Every choice you make to engage more fully with what matters most helps create a world where meaning and connection and genuine purpose are more possible for everyone. The night is quiet now, and your breathing has grown deeper and more regular. Let these thoughts settle gently in your mind, not as tasks to be completed, but as possibilities to be lived into. The meaning you seek is already beginning to unfold through your willingness to ask these questions, to remain open to growth, to continue showing up authentically to the beautiful, complex, meaningful experience of being human. And perhaps this is where Frankl's wisdom becomes most practical for those quiet moments when sleep eludes you, when your mind churns through the day's events or tomorrow's uncertainties. He understood that meaning doesn't require you to have everything figured out before you can begin living purposefully. In fact, the opposite might be true. Meaning often emerges precisely in those spaces of uncertainty, in the gaps between what you planned and what actually unfolds. Think about this for a moment. The most meaningful conversations you've had probably weren't scripted in advance. They emerged organically in response to something unexpected, when you allowed yourself to be present to what the moment was asking of you. The work that has felt most fulfilling likely included elements you couldn't have anticipated when you first began. The relationships that have shaped you most profoundly probably developed in ways that surprised you, through shared experiences you never could have orchestrated. This suggests something important about how meaning actually works in our lives. It's less like following a predetermined blueprint and more like improvising a piece of music. You have certain skills, certain themes you want to explore, but the actual melody emerges through your responsiveness to what's happening in real time. Frankl called this the self-transcendent quality of meaningful existence. When you're fully engaged in something that matters deeply to you, you stop thinking about yourself in that self-conscious, evaluative way that can be so exhausting. You become absorbed in the task, the relationship, the moment itself. Your usual inner commentary quiets down, and you simply become present to what's needed. You've experienced this, haven't you? Those moments when time seemed to suspend itself because you were so completely engaged. Maybe you were lost in a creative project, completely absorbed in helping someone who needed your attention, or simply sitting in comfortable silence with someone you love. In these moments, you weren't thinking about whether you were living meaningfully. You were just living, fully and authentically. This is what Frankl meant when he said that meaning cannot be pursued directly. The more you chase after it, the more elusive it becomes. But when you engage wholeheartedly with something beyond your immediate self-concern, meaning tends to emerge as a natural byproduct of that engagement. It's similar to how happiness works, actually. The people who seem most genuinely content aren't usually those who are constantly pursuing happiness as a goal. They're people who are engaged in activities and relationships that naturally generate satisfaction and joy. The happiness comes not from seeking it, but from living in alignment with what genuinely matters to them. But let's acknowledge something that Frankl was always honest about. Living meaningfully doesn't protect you from suffering, disappointment, or loss. In fact, caring deeply about anything makes you vulnerable to pain when things don't go as hoped. The parent who loves their child intensely suffers more acutely when that child struggles. The artist who pours their heart into their work feels devastated when it's rejected or misunderstood. This vulnerability is not a bug in the system of meaningful living. It's a feature. The capacity to be deeply affected by what matters to you is the same capacity that allows you to experience profound fulfillment and connection. You can't selectively numb yourself to pain without also limiting your access to joy, love, and purpose. Frankl discovered this truth in the starkest possible circumstances, but it applies equally to the ordinary heartbreaks and disappointments of daily life. The colleague who doesn't appreciate your contributions, the creative project that doesn't turn out as you envisioned, the relationship that ends despite your best efforts to make it work. These experiences hurt precisely because they mattered to you, and that mattering, that caring, is actually evidence of your capacity for meaning. The pain you feel when something important doesn't work out isn't a sign that you're doing life wrong. It's a sign that you're doing it fully, with your whole heart engaged. This reframe can be surprisingly liberating. Instead of seeing your disappointments as failures or your emotional reactions as weaknesses, you can begin to recognize them as indicators of your values, signposts pointing toward what you care about most deeply. The frustration you feel when you can't help someone you love is pointing toward your value of compassion and service. The disappointment when a project doesn't meet your standards is highlighting your commitment to excellence and creativity. The sadness when a relationship changes is revealing how much connection and intimacy mean to you. When you view your emotional responses this way, even difficult feelings become sources of information about what you want to orient your life around. They help you identify not just what matters to you, but how much it matters, where you're willing to invest your energy and attention. Frankl also understood something crucial about the relationship between meaning and time. He noticed that people who lived most meaningfully had developed what he called a sense of temporal continuity. They could see their current struggles and efforts as part of a larger story that extended both backward into their past and forward into their future. This doesn't mean living in the past or future at the expense of the present. Rather, it means recognizing that this moment, this choice, this response you're crafting right now is connected to a larger narrative of growth and contribution that gives context and significance to your daily decisions. Consider how different it feels to approach a challenging situation when you see it as an isolated problem versus seeing it as one chapter in your ongoing story of learning and development. The isolated problem feels overwhelming, meaningless, something to be endured or escaped. The chapter in a larger story feels meaningful even when it's difficult, because it's contributing to your evolution as a person. This temporal perspective also helps explain why some people seem to age with grace and wisdom, while others become increasingly bitter or resigned. Those who age well have typically learned to see their accumulated experiences, including their mistakes and losses, as contributions to their understanding and capacity for service to others. The grandmother who shares hard-won wisdom with younger family members, the mentor who helps colleagues avoid pitfalls they once stumbled into, the friend who can offer genuine comfort during difficult times because they've navigated similar challenges themselves. These individuals have transformed their personal history into a resource for meaning and contribution. But you don't have to wait until you're older to begin this process of integration. You can start now, wherever you are in life, by looking for the threads that connect your experiences into a coherent story of growth. What have your struggles taught you about resilience or compassion? How have your successes prepared you to help others achieve similar outcomes? What unique perspective does your particular combination of experiences give you? This isn't about forcing a positive interpretation onto everything that's happened to you. Some experiences are genuinely tragic and shouldn't be minimized or explained away. Rather, it's about recognizing that even difficult experiences can become part of a meaningful narrative when they inform your capacity to understand, help, or connect with others. Frankl spoke often about the importance of what he called provisional meaning. This is meaning that you can access even when you don't have a clear sense of your ultimate purpose or direction. It's the meaning available in this moment, in this choice, in this interaction, regardless of how it fits into some grand life plan. Provisional meaning might be as simple as deciding to listen carefully to a friend who needs to talk, even when you're tired, or choosing to do your work with care and attention, even when it feels routine, or treating a stranger with kindness, even when you're having a difficult day yourself. These small acts of intentional engagement don't require you to have your entire life figured out. They don't depend on knowing your ultimate destiny or having a crystal clear sense of purpose. They're available right here, right now, in whatever circumstance you find yourself. The beautiful thing about provisional meaning is that it tends to accumulate. One conscious choice leads to another. One moment of authentic engagement makes the next one more likely. Gradually, without your having to orchestrate it, these small meaningful moments begin to coalesce into larger patterns of purpose and direction. You wake up one day and realize that your life has developed a certain coherence, a sense of direction that emerged not from a single, dramatic decision, but from hundreds of small choices to show up authentically to whatever was in front of you. This organic development of meaning feels different from meaning that's imposed from outside or manufactured through willpower. It has a quality of rightness, of alignment that comes from growing naturally out of your genuine responses to life's invitations and challenges. Frankl also recognized that meaning is deeply personal and cannot be prescribed by others. What gives your life significance might be completely different from what energizes your closest friends or family members. This isn't a problem to be solved, but a reality to be celebrated. The diversity of human purposes and passions is part of what makes our collective existence so rich and resilient. We need people who are called to create beauty, and we need people who are called to solve practical problems. We need those who are drawn to quiet contemplation, and we need those who thrive in dynamic social environments. Your particular way of finding and expressing meaning is needed, even if it doesn't match anyone else's template for a meaningful life. The introvert who finds deep satisfaction in careful research contributes something different but equally valuable as the extrovert who energizes large groups of people. The person who expresses meaning through raising children with love and attention is fulfilling a different but equally important purpose as the person who channels their nurturing impulse into caring for animals or plants or creating art that moves people. This understanding can free you from the exhausting task of trying to live up to others' definitions of success or significance. Instead of asking whether your path looks meaningful to outside observers, you can focus on the more important question. Does this feel authentic and engaging to you? Does it call forth your best qualities? Does it contribute to something you care about? These questions don't have right or wrong answers, only answers that are more or less aligned with your genuine nature and values. And those answers can evolve over time as you grow and change and encounter new circumstances and opportunities. The search for meaning isn't a one-time project you complete in young adulthood and then coast on for the rest of your life. It's an ongoing process of discovery and adjustment, of learning what energizes you and what drains you, what you want to contribute, and how you want to contribute it. Some seasons of your life might be primarily focused on learning and growth. Others might emphasize service and contribution. Still others might involve rest, recovery, and integration. All of these phases can be meaningful when approached with awareness and intentionality. As you lie there tonight, perhaps feeling the weight of the day beginning to lift from your shoulders, consider this gentle possibility. You don't need to solve the question of your life's meaning like a puzzle with a single correct answer. Instead, you can approach it like tending a garden, offering attention and care to what wants to grow, trusting that something beautiful will emerge even if you can't predict exactly what form it will take. The meaning you seek isn't hiding in some distant achievement or perfect set of circumstances. It's available right here, in your willingness to engage thoughtfully with whatever life is presenting to you, in your choice to treat your relationships, your work, your challenges, and your quiet moments as opportunities for authentic expression and genuine contribution. This doesn't mean forcing positivity or pretending that everything is meaningful in obvious ways. Sometimes life feels difficult, confusing, or mundane. But even in these states, you retain the capacity to choose your response, to look for small ways to express your values, to remain open to unexpected opportunities for connection or service or growth. The thread that weaves all of this together isn't some grand philosophy or complex system of beliefs. It's simply your ongoing willingness to remain engaged with your own existence, to keep asking what this moment is inviting from you, to continue showing up authentically, even when you don't have all the answers. Frankl's great insight was that this willingness itself is meaningful. The very act of taking your life seriously, of treating your choices as if they matter, of remaining open to growth and service and love, creates the foundation for a meaningful existence regardless of external circumstances. Your search for meaning is already an expression of your deepest human capacity. It's evidence of your refusal to sleepwalk through your days, your commitment to living consciously and intentionally. That commitment, that quality of engagement, is itself a contribution to the world, a small but significant light in the larger human story of awakening and growth. Tonight, as your thoughts begin to quiet and your breathing deepens, rest in this truth. The life you're living right now, with all its imperfections and uncertainties, is already rich with potential meaning. Not meaning you have to earn or achieve, but meaning you can discover and create through your daily choices to remain present, authentic, and engaged with whatever unfolds. The questions we've explored together don't require immediate resolution. They're invitations to a way of living, a quality of attention you can bring to tomorrow and all the days that follow. The meaning you seek is not a destination you arrive at, but a path you walk, moment by moment, choice by choice, with increasing awareness of the profound significance of simply being here, being conscious, being willing to participate fully in the beautiful, complex, meaningful experience of being human. The gentle wisdom in this understanding is that you don't need to wait for some dramatic revelation or perfect moment of clarity to begin living with greater meaning. Frankl discovered that meaning often reveals itself through what he called the will to meaning, that fundamental human drive to find significance in our existence. But unlike other drives, this one can't be satisfied through consumption or achievement alone. It requires engagement, participation, the willingness to step into your life rather than simply observing it from the sidelines. Think about those moments when you felt most fully yourself. Perhaps it was during a conversation where you felt completely understood, or while working on something that challenged you in exactly the right way, or simply sitting quietly with someone you love as evening light filtered through the windows. What these experiences likely shared wasn't their external circumstances, but the quality of presence you brought to them. This presence, this full engagement with whatever is in front of you, is what Frankl recognized as the gateway to meaning. It's not about finding the perfect activity or ideal relationship or ultimate purpose. It's about bringing your complete attention and authentic response to whatever you encounter, trusting that meaning emerges through this quality of engagement rather than through the specific content of your experiences. But let's be honest about something that can make this feel complicated. We live in a culture that often equates meaning with productivity, success with significance, achievement with worth. The messages around us constantly suggest that meaningful lives look a certain way, follow particular trajectories, result in measurable outcomes that others can recognize and validate. Frankl understood this pressure because he felt it himself. Before his experience in the concentration camps, he had been building a successful psychiatric practice, working on manuscripts he hoped would establish his professional reputation, planning a future that looked meaningful according to conventional standards. When all of that was stripped away, he had to discover what meaning looked like when divorced from external markers of success. What he found might surprise you. The most meaningful moments in the camps weren't grand gestures of heroism or resistance. They were small acts of human dignity and connection. Sharing a piece of bread with someone who needed it more, offering comfort to a fellow prisoner who was losing hope, maintaining inner integrity when external circumstances made it easy to abandon your values. These actions didn't change the prisoner's circumstances, but they transformed the meaning of those circumstances. They proved that even in situations designed to strip away human dignity, individuals could still choose responses that affirmed their essential humanity. You might wonder how this applies to your own life, which hopefully bears no resemblance to such extreme conditions. But consider the smaller ways that external circumstances can make it tempting to abandon your values. The workplace that rewards competition over collaboration. The social situations that encourage performance over authenticity. The cultural messages that suggest your worth depends on your productivity or appearance or achievements. In these everyday situations, you face the same fundamental choice that Frankl observed in the camps. Will you let external pressures determine your responses? Or will you choose actions that reflect your deeper values, regardless of whether they're rewarded or recognized? This choice is available in the smallest interactions. The way you respond when someone cuts in front of you in line. How you treat the cashier who's moving slowly when you're in a hurry. Whether you listen generously when a friend needs to talk, even when you're tired. These moments might seem insignificant, but they're actually opportunities to practice the kind of meaning-making that Frankl discovered. Each time you choose authenticity over approval, kindness over efficiency, presence over distraction, you're exercising what he called the last human freedom. You're demonstrating that your responses aren't determined by circumstances, but by your commitment to living according to your deepest values. This understanding can transform how you view the ordinary challenges of daily life. Instead of seeing them as obstacles to meaning, you begin to recognize them as opportunities to clarify and express what matters most to you. The difficult conversation becomes a chance to practice courage and honesty. The mundane task becomes an opportunity to bring excellence and care to whatever you're doing. Frankl also noticed something fascinating about people who lived this way. They tended to experience what he called self-transcendence, moments when their usual self-consciousness dissolved, and they became completely absorbed in something beyond their immediate personal concerns. This wasn't a mystical experience requiring years of meditation or spiritual practice. It was simply what happened when people engaged fully with activities or relationships that genuinely mattered to them. You've experienced this yourself, haven't you? Those times when you were so engaged in helping someone, creating something, or solving a problem that you lost track of time and forgot to worry about how you were performing or what others might think. In these moments, you weren't thinking about meaning, you were simply living it. This quality of self-transcendence offers a clue about how meaning actually works in our lives. It's not something we create through self-focused introspection or endless analysis of our purpose. It emerges naturally when we become genuinely interested in something or someone beyond ourselves. The parent absorbed in understanding their child's unique perspective. The gardener fascinated by the subtle changes in their plants throughout the seasons. The teacher energized by watching students discover something new. These individuals aren't pursuing meaning directly. They're following their genuine interests and concerns, and meaning emerges as a byproduct of their engagement. This is why Frankl suggested that meaning cannot be pursued directly, but must be encountered through living authentically and responsively. But what about those periods when nothing feels particularly engaging or meaningful? When you're going through the motions, but not feeling deeply connected to any of it? Frankl understood these seasons too. He called them existential vacuums, and he recognized them as natural parts of human development, rather than signs of personal failure. These empty periods often signal that you've outgrown your current understanding of what makes life worthwhile. They're invitations to explore new possibilities, to question assumptions you've been carrying without examination, to open yourself to forms of meaning you might not have considered before. Instead of fighting against these feelings or trying to force enthusiasm you don't feel, Frankl suggested approaching them with curiosity. What is this emptiness telling you about what you've been pursuing? What values or interests might be trying to emerge that you haven't yet recognized or honored? Sometimes the vacuum signals that you've been living according to others' expectations rather than your own authentic impulses. Other times, it indicates that you're ready for deeper challenges or different kinds of contribution than what you've been pursuing. Occasionally, it simply means you need rest, space to integrate experiences, and allow new directions to emerge naturally. The key is to remain open during these transitional periods rather than rushing to fill the emptiness with activity or distraction. Some of the most significant developments in people's lives emerge from their willingness to sit with uncertainty and allow new possibilities to surface without forcing them. This tolerance for uncertainty is actually one of the most valuable qualities you can develop in your search for meaning. Life rarely unfolds according to our plans, and meaning often appears in unexpected forms, through circumstances we couldn't have anticipated or orchestrated. The career change that terrifies you, but ultimately leads to work that feels deeply satisfying. The relationship that challenges you in ways you never expected, but helps you grow into a more authentic version of yourself. The loss that devastates you initially, but eventually opens you to forms of compassion and service you might never have discovered otherwise. These experiences can't be planned or predicted, but they become possible when you cultivate what Frankl called an openness to meaning. This isn't passive waiting for significance to arrive from outside. It's an active stance of receptivity, a willingness to recognize and respond to meaningful possibilities when they present themselves. This openness requires a particular kind of courage, not the dramatic courage of heroic actions, but the quiet courage of remaining available to growth and change, even when you can't see where they might lead. The courage to say yes to opportunities that intrigue you even when they don't fit your existing plans. The courage to end commitments that no longer serve your development even when they provide security or approval. It also requires what Frankl called responsibility, the ability to respond thoughtfully to what life presents, rather than simply reacting from habit or conditioning. This responsibility isn't a burden but a privilege, the recognition that your choices matter, that how you respond to circumstances contributes to the larger story of human growth and awakening. Every time you choose to respond with patience instead of irritation, creativity instead of resignation, love instead of fear, you're exercising this responsibility. You're contributing to the kind of world you want to live in through the quality of engagement you bring to your daily experiences. This perspective can transform even mundane activities into opportunities for meaningful contribution. The way you treat service workers becomes an expression of your values about human dignity. The care you bring to routine tasks becomes a practice of excellence and mindfulness. The attention you offer to friends and family members becomes a gift of presence in a world that often feels rushed and distracted. Frankl discovered that people who lived most meaningfully had learned to see their individual growth and healing as contributions to something larger. When you work to understand yourself more deeply, to heal old wounds, to develop your capacities and talents, you're not just helping yourself, you're contributing to the collective human project of consciousness and compassion. The person who learns to manage their anxiety with wisdom and skill becomes a resource for others facing similar challenges. The individual who transforms their relationship with failure and disappointment offers hope to those still struggling with perfectionism. The one who discovers how to maintain hope during difficult periods provides inspiration for others navigating their own dark nights. Your personal development is never purely personal. It ripples outward in ways you may never fully recognize, influencing others through your example, your increased capacity for understanding and service, your ability to meet life's challenges with greater wisdom and grace. This interconnectedness of individual and collective meaning offers comfort during periods when your personal search for purpose feels difficult or unclear. Even when you can't see how your struggles and growth serve any larger purpose, you can trust that they do. Your willingness to keep learning, growing, and engaging authentically contributes to the broader human story of evolution and awakening. As you rest here tonight, feeling the quiet settling around you like a gentle blanket, consider this invitation. You don't need to solve the mystery of your life's ultimate purpose before you can begin living meaningfully. You can start exactly where you are, with whatever circumstances currently surround you, by bringing increased awareness and intentionality to your daily choices and responses. The meaning you seek isn't hidden in some distant achievement or perfect set of conditions. It's woven into the fabric of your ordinary moments, waiting to be recognized and embraced through your willingness to engage fully with whatever life presents. It emerges through your choice to treat each interaction, each challenge, each quiet moment as an opportunity to express your deepest values and contribute to something larger than your immediate concerns. Tomorrow will offer fresh opportunities to practice this quality of meaningful engagement. Moments to listen more deeply, to respond more thoughtfully, to choose authenticity over convenience. These opportunities don't require you to become someone different or achieve something extraordinary. They simply ask you to become more present to the person you already are and the life you're already living. The search for meaning isn't a problem you solve once and then forget about. It's a way of approaching life that deepens and evolves as you do, a commitment to remaining engaged with the ongoing mystery of what it means to be human in this complex and beautiful world. Frankl's great gift was showing us that this engagement is always possible, always available, regardless of circumstances. Even in the darkest situations, we retain the freedom to choose our response, and that freedom is the foundation of human dignity and meaning. How much more possible is meaningful living when we have the relative freedom and safety that most of us enjoy? Your life, with all its imperfections and uncertainties, contains everything necessary for deep fulfillment and purpose. Not meaning that depends on external validation or perfect outcomes, but meaning that flows from your commitment to living consciously, choosing responsively, remaining open to growth and service and love. This is the quiet revolution that begins within each person who decides to take their own existence seriously, to treat their choices as if they matter, to remain curious about what life is asking of them. It spreads not through grand gestures or public declarations, but through the simple power of one person choosing to show up more fully to their own experience and relationships. The questions we've explored together tonight don't require immediate answers or perfect understanding. They're companions for your ongoing journey, reminders to remain engaged with what matters most, invitations to continue discovering what it means to live with purpose and authenticity in your own unique circumstances. As sleep begins to call to you, rest in this gentle truth. The meaning you seek is already beginning to unfold through your willingness to ask these questions, to remain open to growth, to continue showing up thoughtfully to the beautiful, complex, meaningful adventure of being alive. Your search itself is meaningful, your engagement already a contribution to the larger human story of consciousness and connection and care. The night is deep now, and your breathing has found its own quiet rhythm. Let these reflections settle softly in your awareness, not as tasks to complete, but as possibilities to explore. The meaning you seek doesn't require perfect conditions or ideal circumstances. It's available right here, right now, in your willingness to remain present to whatever unfolds, to choose your responses consciously, to continue participating fully in the ongoing mystery of what it means to be human. And in this participation, this quality of engaged presence, you discover that meaning isn't something you have to create from nothing or achieve through extraordinary effort. It's something you uncover moment by moment through your commitment to living authentically, loving generously, and remaining open to the countless ways that significance can emerge from the most ordinary moments of an extraordinary life. Rest here for a moment and notice something beautiful that Frankl understood about the nature of human resilience. He observed that the people who maintained their sense of meaning weren't necessarily the strongest physically or the most optimistic by temperament. They were simply the ones who had learned to find significance in the small spaces between stimulus and response, in those brief moments where choice lives. You experience these moments constantly throughout your day, though you might not recognize them as opportunities for meaning. The pause before you respond to an email that irritates you, the split second when you decide whether to really listen to someone or just wait for your turn to speak, the choice between scrolling through your phone or taking a moment to notice the quality of light in your room. These micro moments of decision might seem trivial, but they're actually where meaning is born and sustained. Each time you choose presence over distraction, patience over reactivity, curiosity over judgment, you're practicing the fundamental skill that Frankl discovered in the most extreme circumstances. You're exercising your capacity to shape your experience through conscious response rather than unconscious reaction. This isn't about becoming perfect or always making the ideal choice. It's about developing awareness of these choice points and gradually, gently, increasing the frequency with which you pause and choose rather than simply react from habit or impulse. The meaning emerges not from perfection, but from the growing recognition that you have this power, this freedom, this capacity to influence your experience through the quality of attention you bring to each moment. Consider how this applies to some of the most common sources of dissatisfaction in modern life. The job that feels routine or unfulfilling, the relationship that has settled into comfortable but uninspiring patterns, the daily routines that seem to repeat without much variation or excitement. Frankl would suggest that the path to meaning in these situations isn't necessarily to change everything dramatically, though sometimes change is appropriate. Often, it's to bring a different quality of engagement to what's already present, to approach your work with curiosity about how you might contribute something valuable, even in small ways, to look for opportunities to express creativity, excellence, or service within whatever role you find yourself in. The accountant who begins to see their work as helping people achieve financial security, the teacher who recognizes each lesson as an opportunity to spark curiosity or build confidence, the parent who approaches even the most mundane caregiving tasks as chances to model patience, attention, and love. This shift in perspective doesn't require external recognition or validation. In fact, some of the most meaningful contributions happen quietly, noticed only by you and perhaps by those directly affected. The genuine smile you offer to someone having a difficult day, the extra care you take with a task that no one else will see, the decision to listen deeply when someone needs to be heard. These actions create what Frankl called value, the worth that emerges not from achievement or recognition, but from the integrity with which you engage with your daily experience. This value doesn't depend on outcomes or appreciation from others. It exists simply because you chose to bring your best self to whatever situation presented itself. But let's acknowledge something that can make this challenging. We live in a time when meaning is often confused with passion, when we're told to find work we love so much it doesn't feel like work, to pursue relationships that never require effort or compromise, to seek experiences that consistently deliver excitement and fulfillment. This cultural emphasis on passion and excitement can make ordinary life feel inadequate by comparison. If you're not waking up every day, thrilled about your work, deeply in love with your partner, constantly inspired by your surroundings, it's easy to conclude that something is wrong with your life or your choices. Frankl understood that this pursuit of constant fulfillment is not only unrealistic, but actually counterproductive. Meaning doesn't require passion in the conventional sense. It requires presence, commitment, and the willingness to find significance in whatever circumstances you encounter. Not just the circumstances that feel immediately exciting or gratifying. Some of the most meaningful lives are built on a foundation of quiet dedication rather than burning passion. The nurse who provides compassionate care day after day, finding meaning not in dramatic moments of healing, but in the consistent quality of attention they bring to each patient. The craftsperson who takes pride in the details that most people will never notice, finding satisfaction in the pursuit of excellence for its own sake. The parent who shows up with patience and love, through countless ordinary moments, building a child's sense of security and worth, not through grand gestures, but through reliable presence and care. These individuals have discovered what Frankl knew. That meaning often lives in the spaces between the highlight reels, in the commitment to bring your best self to whatever life asks of you. This doesn't mean settling for dissatisfaction or avoiding growth and change when they're needed. Rather, it means recognizing that meaning can coexist with imperfection, that you don't have to love every aspect of your life to find deep fulfillment in how you choose to engage with it. Sometimes the most meaningful periods of your life will also be the most challenging. The months spent caring for an aging parent, managing your own health crisis, supporting a friend through divorce, or navigating a career transition. These experiences often don't feel meaningful while you're in the middle of them. They feel difficult, demanding, sometimes overwhelming. But looking back, you might recognize these periods as times when you discovered capacities you didn't know you possessed, when you clarified what really matters to you, when you learned to access reserves of strength, patience, or compassion that surprised you. The meaning wasn't in the difficulty itself, but in how you chose to meet it, what you allowed it to teach you, how you used it to deepen your understanding of yourself and others. Frankl also recognized that meaning has a temporal quality that's different from happiness or pleasure. Pleasurable experiences tend to fade quickly in memory unless they're reinforced or repeated, but meaningful experiences often grow richer over time, gaining significance as you understand their role in your larger story of growth and development. The conversation that challenged your assumptions and opened new possibilities for thinking. The risk you took that didn't turn out as expected but taught you something valuable about courage or resilience. The loss that devastated you initially, but eventually opened your heart to deeper compassion for others facing similar experiences. These memories don't just provide comfort or nostalgia. They become resources, sources of wisdom and strength that you can draw upon when facing new challenges. They remind you of your capacity to grow, to adapt, to find meaning, even in circumstances you never would have chosen. This is why Frankl emphasized the importance of taking responsibility for your own story, for how you interpret and integrate your experiences. Two people can face similar circumstances and create entirely different meanings from them, based on the lens through which they view their experiences and the choices they make about how to respond. The person who experiences failure and concludes that they're inadequate creates a very different life trajectory than the person who experiences failure and concludes that they need to adjust their approach or develop new skills. The individual who faces betrayal and decides that people can't be trusted lives in a different world than the person who faces betrayal and becomes more discerning about whom to trust, while remaining open to genuine connection. Neither response is right or wrong in some absolute sense, but they lead to very different experiences of meaning and possibility. The capacity to shape your interpretation of events, to choose how you integrate difficult experiences into your ongoing story, is one of the most powerful tools you have for creating a meaningful life. This interpretive freedom doesn't mean denying reality or forcing positive meanings onto genuinely negative experiences. Some things are genuinely harmful and shouldn't be rationalized or minimized. Rather, it means recognizing that even when you can't control what happens to you, you retain significant influence over what it means to you and how it shapes your future choices. The survivor of trauma who becomes an advocate for others facing similar challenges. The person who experiences discrimination and dedicates themselves to creating more inclusive environments. The individual who faces serious illness and develops deeper appreciation for ordinary moments of health and connection. These people haven't erased their difficult experiences or pretended they were somehow positive. They found ways to let those experiences contribute to their capacity for service, understanding, and connection with others. They've transformed their pain into wisdom, their struggles into resources for helping others navigate similar challenges. But meaning-making isn't always this dramatic or visible. Sometimes it's simply the quiet decision to let your experiences make you more patient rather than more bitter, more grateful rather than more entitled, more open rather than more closed. These internal transformations might not be obvious to others, but they profoundly affect the quality of your daily experience and relationships. As you lie there tonight, feeling the gentle weight of these reflections settling into your awareness, consider your own story with fresh eyes. What experiences have shaped you in ways that initially seemed negative, but ultimately contributed to your growth or capacity to help others? What challenges have revealed strengths or values you might not have discovered otherwise? This isn't about forced gratitude or denying the reality of loss and disappointment. It's simply about recognizing the complexity of human experience, the way that meaning often emerges from the interplay between difficulty and response, between what happens to you and what you choose to do with what happens to you. Frankl discovered that people who lived most meaningfully had developed what he called a sense of coherence, the ability to see their individual experiences as part of a larger story that made sense, even when individual chapters were difficult or confusing. This coherence wasn't something imposed from outside, but something that emerged through reflection and integration over time. You can cultivate this sense of coherence by periodically stepping back and looking for the threads that connect your experiences. How has your journey through various relationships taught you about love, boundaries, or communication? What has your work life revealed about your values, talents, or interests? How have your struggles with health, finances, or family dynamics contributed to your understanding of what really matters? These patterns often become clear only in retrospect, which is why Frankl emphasized the importance of reflection and meaning-making as ongoing practices rather than one-time insights. The story of your life continues to evolve, and experiences that seemed meaningless or purely negative at the time often reveal their significance only when viewed from the vantage point of later growth and understanding. This temporal dimension of meaning offers comfort during periods when life feels chaotic or directionless. Even when you can't see how your current struggles or uncertainties fit into any larger purpose, you can trust that clarity often emerges over time, that experiences which feel fragmentary or difficult in the moment often reveal their significance as part of your ongoing development. The key is to remain engaged with your experience rather than simply enduring it, to continue looking for opportunities to choose your response rather than simply reacting from habit or conditioning. This engagement doesn't guarantee that everything will make sense immediately, but it ensures that you're actively participating in the creation of meaning rather than waiting passively for it to arrive from outside. Frankl also understood something crucial about the relationship between meaning and community. While the choice to live meaningfully is ultimately personal and cannot be made by others on your behalf, meaning itself often emerges through your connections and contributions to the larger human family. The work that feels most significant is often work that serves others in some way, even if indirectly. The relationships that provide the deepest satisfaction are typically those where you can be authentic while also contributing to someone else's well-being or growth. The activities that engage you most fully often involve using your talents or interests in ways that benefit something larger than your immediate personal concerns. This doesn't mean sacrificing your own needs or authentic interests for the sake of others. Rather, it suggests that the sweetest satisfaction often comes when you can be truly yourself while also serving something beyond yourself, when your personal growth and authentic expression naturally contribute to the welfare of others. The artist who creates not just for personal expression, but to offer beauty or insight to others. The business owner who builds a company that provides valuable products while also creating meaningful work for employees. The friend who offers support and understanding while also receiving the same from those they care about. These individuals have found what Frankl called the intersection of self-actualization and self-transcendence, the place where becoming more fully yourself naturally leads to greater service and connection with others. This intersection isn't something you can force or manufacture, but it often emerges when you pursue your authentic interests and development with awareness of how they might contribute to the larger community. Sometimes this contribution is obvious and immediate. Other times it's subtle and long-term. The teacher whose influence on students becomes apparent only years later. The parent whose patient love shapes a child's capacity for healthy relationships throughout their life. The friend whose encouragement during a difficult period helps someone discover strengths they didn't know they possessed. Your contributions to meaning, both for yourself and others, often happen through these quiet influences and connections rather than through dramatic gestures or public achievements. The quality of presence you bring to your interactions, the integrity with which you handle your responsibilities, the compassion you show during others' difficult moments. These ordinary expressions of your values ripple outward in ways you may never fully see or understand. But they matter. They contribute to the kind of world we all share, to the cultural atmosphere of kindness or indifference, meaning or emptiness, connection or isolation. Every time you choose to respond with patience instead of irritation, curiosity instead of judgment, generosity instead of self-protection, you're participating in the collective human project of creating a more meaningful and compassionate world. This understanding can transform how you view even your smallest daily choices. The decision to really listen when someone is speaking to you. The choice to do your work with care and attention rather than just getting through it. The moment when you pause before responding to frustration with kindness instead of reactivity. These micro-choices might seem insignificant in isolation, but they accumulate into patterns of being the experience of everyone you encounter. They that shape not only your own experience, but also become expressions of your values, contributions to the kind of relationships and communities you want to be part of, practices that strengthen your capacity for meaningful engagement. As the night deepens around you and your thoughts begin their gentle drift towards sleep, rest in this quiet recognition. The search for meaning isn't a burden you carry alone, or a problem you must solve in isolation. It's part of the shared human experience of trying to understand what makes life worth living, how to respond wisely to both joy and suffering, what it means to contribute something valuable during our brief time here. Your individual journey toward meaning is connected to everyone else's similar journey. Your growth contributes to collective wisdom. Your healing makes space for others' healing. Your willingness to remain engaged with life's biggest questions helps create a world where such questioning is valued and supported. The meaning you seek isn't hiding in some perfect future or ideal set of circumstances. It's woven into the fabric of your current experience, waiting to be discovered through your commitment to remain present, authentic, and responsive to whatever each moment offers. It emerges through your choice to treat your life as significant, your relationships as sacred, your daily opportunities for choice and response as chances to express what matters most deeply to you. Tomorrow will bring new invitations to practice this quality of meaningful engagement, fresh opportunities to choose presence over distraction, authenticity over approval, service over self-absorption. These invitations don't require you to become someone extraordinary or achieve something unprecedented. They simply ask you to continue becoming more fully yourself while remaining aware of how your authentic presence contributes to the larger web of human connection and growth. The questions we've explored together tonight will continue traveling with you, not as problems demanding immediate solutions, but as companions for your ongoing journey of discovery. They remind you to remain curious about what life is asking of you, to stay open to unexpected sources of meaning, to trust that your sincere engagement with whatever circumstances arise is itself a form of contribution to something larger and more beautiful than you can fully comprehend. In this trust, in this willingness to participate fully in the mystery of conscious existence, you discover that meaning isn't something you have to create from nothing or earn through extraordinary achievement. It's something you uncover, moment by moment, through your commitment to living with awareness, choosing with intention, and remaining open to the countless ways that significance can emerge from the most ordinary moments of an extraordinary human life. Rest now in this gentle understanding. The meaning Frankl discovered isn't something that requires you to become a different person or live a dramatically different life. It asks only that you bring increased awareness to the person you already are, to recognize the profound significance that already exists within your ordinary days. There's something deeply peaceful about this realization, isn't there? You don't have to wait for the perfect job, the ideal relationship, or some moment of cosmic clarity to begin living meaningfully. The raw materials for a significant existence are already present in your current circumstances, waiting to be recognized and engaged with more intentionally. Consider the conversations you'll have tomorrow. Each one offers an opportunity to practice genuine presence, to listen not just for the words being spoken, but for the person behind them. The colleague who mentions they're struggling with a project, the friend who seems more distant than usual, the family member who shares something they're excited about. These moments of human connection are where meaning often lives most naturally. You don't have to become a therapist or counselor to offer the gift of authentic attention. Sometimes the most meaningful thing you can do is simply create space for someone else to be heard, to feel seen, to know that their experience matters to at least one other person. This kind of presence doesn't require special training or perfect wisdom. It just asks for your willingness to step outside your own concerns long enough to genuinely receive another person's reality. Frankl noticed that people who found the deepest meaning in life had learned to see themselves as part of an ongoing conversation between past and future. They understood that they had received gifts from previous generations, wisdom and opportunities and freedoms that others had worked to create, and they felt a responsibility to contribute something valuable that future generations might build upon. This doesn't mean you have to solve world hunger or create lasting monuments. It might mean teaching a skill to someone younger, preserving a family tradition that might otherwise be lost, or simply modeling a way of being that demonstrates patience, kindness, or courage to those who observe your daily choices. The parent who shows their children how to handle disappointment with grace is passing on emotional wisdom. The neighbor who maintains a beautiful garden is contributing to the aesthetic richness of the community. The person who treats service workers with respect and appreciation is modeling human dignity in small but significant ways. These contributions create what Frankl understood as a kind of temporal meaning, significance that extends beyond your individual lifetime through the influence you have on others and the values you help perpetuate or transform. You become part of the larger human story of growth and awakening, not through grand gestures, but through the accumulated effect of countless small choices to show up with integrity and care. Think about the people who have influenced you most profoundly. Often they weren't famous figures or dramatic personalities. They were individuals who demonstrated through their daily behavior what it looked like to live with purpose, to treat others with respect, to maintain hope during difficult periods, to find joy in simple pleasures. You have the same capacity to influence others through the quality of presence you bring to ordinary interactions. The cashier who's had a difficult day might remember your patient kindness. The child who observes how you handle frustration is learning about emotional regulation. The friend who watches you navigate a challenging situation with grace receives a template for their own future difficulties. This influence happens naturally, without your having to orchestrate it or even be aware of it. Simply by living with intention and authenticity, you become part of the web of positive influence that helps create a more meaningful world for everyone. But Frankl also understood something important about the relationship between meaning and solitude. While connection with others is essential, meaning also requires periods of quiet reflection, times when you can step back from the constant input of daily life and listen to your own inner wisdom. These moments of solitude aren't about escaping from life, but about digesting it, allowing your experiences to settle and reveal their deeper significance. The evening walk when you process the day's events, the quiet morning coffee when you set intentions for what's ahead, the few minutes before sleep when you reflect on what felt most alive and authentic in your recent experience. In our constantly connected world, these periods of reflection can feel like luxury or even self-indulgence, but Frankl recognized them as essential for meaning-making. Without time to reflect and integrate, experiences remain fragmentary, disconnected from any larger sense of purpose or growth. You might think of this reflective practice as tending the garden of your inner life, Just as plants need time to absorb water and nutrients, your psyche needs time to absorb the significance of your experiences, to understand how they connect to your values and aspirations, to recognize patterns of growth or areas that need attention. This doesn't require elaborate rituals or extensive journaling, though those practices can be valuable. Sometimes it's simply a matter of pausing during transitions in your day to notice what you're feeling, what you've learned, what you want to carry forward or leave behind. The brief moment of gratitude before a meal, acknowledging not just the food, but all the hands and processes that brought it to your table. The pause at the end of a workday to recognize what felt meaningful in your efforts, even if the day was challenging. The few minutes before sleep to appreciate the small moments of beauty or connection you encountered. These micro practices of reflection help you stay conscious of the meaning that's already present in your life, rather than constantly searching for it in some future achievement or different set of circumstances. They help you recognize the threads that connect your individual experiences into a coherent story of growth and contribution. Frankl also discovered that meaning has a quality he called irreplaceability. Each person's life circumstances, personality, experiences, and relationships create a unique combination of opportunities for significance that no one else can fulfill in quite the same way. The shy person who notices others who are overlooked and offers quiet encouragement. The individual who has experienced loss and can sit comfortably with others in their grief without trying to fix or minimize their pain. The person who has learned to find contentment with simple pleasures and can model that satisfaction for others, caught up in endless wanting. Your particular combination of strengths and vulnerabilities, successes and failures, interests and aversions creates possibilities for meaning that are distinctly yours. Not better or worse than what others can offer, just different. The meaning you create through your specific way of engaging with life is unrepeatable and irreplaceable. This understanding can be deeply liberating. Instead of comparing your path to others or feeling inadequate because your journey doesn't look like someone else's, you can begin to appreciate the unique contribution that only you can make through your authentic engagement with your own circumstances. The introvert who creates meaning through deep, thoughtful relationships rather than large social gatherings. The person who expresses purpose through careful attention to detail rather than big-picture vision. The individual who serves others through quiet acts of practical help rather than inspirational speeches. Each of these ways of being meaningful is valuable and needed. The diversity of human temperaments and talents ensures that all the different aspects of life and community receive attention and care from those who are naturally drawn to them. But perhaps most importantly, Frankl understood that meaning is ultimately about freedom. Not the freedom from responsibility or consequence, but the freedom to choose your response to whatever life presents. This freedom exists in every moment, regardless of your circumstances, and exercising it consciously is what transforms ordinary existence into meaningful living. You experience this freedom in the pause between something happening and your response to it, the moment when you can choose patience instead of reactivity, curiosity instead of judgment, kindness instead of indifference. These choice points might last only seconds, but they're where your character is formed and your values are expressed. The traffic jam that could trigger frustration or become an opportunity to practice acceptance. The criticism that could provoke defensiveness or invite self-reflection. The unexpected change in plans that could cause stress or open up new possibilities you hadn't considered. In each of these situations, you retain the fundamental freedom to choose your attitude and response. This choice doesn't control outcomes, but it profoundly influences your experience and the influence you have on others. It's what allows you to remain an active participant in creating meaning rather than a passive victim of circumstances. This freedom is what Frankl called the last human freedom, the one thing that can never be taken away from you, regardless of external conditions. Even in the most constrained situations, You retain the ability to choose how you'll meet whatever you're facing, what attitude you'll bring to your circumstances, how you'll treat others who share your situation. Recognizing this freedom can transform your relationship with difficult experiences. Instead of feeling helpless or overwhelmed, you begin to see challenges as opportunities to exercise this fundamental human capacity. Not because difficulties are somehow good, but because your response to them reveals and develops qualities like courage, compassion, resilience, and wisdom. The person who faces illness with grace doesn't enjoy being sick, but they discover inner resources they might never have accessed otherwise. The individual who navigates job loss with optimism isn't happy about unemployment, but they might uncover interests or opportunities that lead to more fulfilling work. These aren't examples of forced positivity or denial of real problems. They're illustrations of how meaning can emerge through the quality of engagement you bring to whatever circumstances arise, including circumstances you never would have chosen. As you settle deeper into the quiet of this evening, feeling your body relax and your thoughts slow their familiar dance, let this understanding rest gently in your awareness. The meaning you seek doesn't require you to solve all of life's mysteries or achieve some perfect state of enlightenment. It asks only for your willingness to remain engaged with your own experience, to continue choosing your responses consciously, to stay open to the countless small opportunities each day offers for authentic expression and genuine connection. The significance you long for is already emerging through your commitment to live thoughtfully, to treat your choices as if they matter, to remain curious about what it means to be human in this complex and beautiful world. Tomorrow will unfold with its own mixture of routine and surprise, challenge and opportunity. Within that unfolding, you'll encounter moments that invite you to practice what we've been exploring together. Chances to choose presence over distraction, authenticity over performance, service over self-absorption. These opportunities won't announce themselves with fanfare or come with instruction manuals. They'll appear as ordinary interactions, routine decisions, small choice points that seem insignificant until you recognize them as invitations to live more meaningfully. Your growing awareness of these invitations, your increasing willingness to respond to them consciously, is itself a form of meaning-making. The search for purpose isn't a destination you reach, but a quality of attention you cultivate. It's not about finding the perfect answer, but about remaining engaged with the important questions. It's not about achieving some final state of fulfillment, but about participating fully in the ongoing mystery of conscious existence. Frankl's greatest insight was that this participation is always available, always possible, regardless of circumstances. Even when life feels difficult or uncertain, even when your plans don't unfold as expected, even when you're not sure what comes next, you retain the capacity to choose your response, to treat each moment as significant, to remain open to unexpected sources of meaning and connection. This capacity is your birthright as a conscious being, your inheritance from the long line of humans who have grappled with these same questions and discovered their own unique answers through living fully, loving generously, and remaining engaged with whatever life presented to them. Your individual search for meaning is part of this larger human story of awakening and growth. Your willingness to keep asking what makes life worth living contributes to the collective wisdom that helps others navigate their own journeys towards significance and purpose. Tonight, as sleep begins to call to you more insistently, rest in this gentle truth. The meaning you seek is not hiding in some distant future or perfect set of circumstances. It's present right here, emerging through your commitment to remain conscious, to choose responsively, to continue participating authentically in the beautiful, challenging, meaningful adventure of being alive. Your questions about purpose and significance don't need immediate answers. They need ongoing engagement. Your search for meaning doesn't require perfect understanding. It requires sincere participation. Your desire for a life that matters doesn't demand extraordinary achievements. It asks only for ordinary presence, authentic response, and the quiet courage to remain open to whatever wants to emerge through your unique way of being in this world. In this openness, in this willingness to remain engaged with the deepest questions of human existence, you discover that meaning isn't something you create from nothing or achieve through exceptional effort. It's something you uncover through your daily choices to live consciously, love generously, and participate fully in the ongoing mystery of what it means to be human on this earth, in this time, with this particular opportunity to contribute something irreplaceably yours to the larger story of consciousness and connection and care. Rest here in this gentle recognition that the path toward meaning isn't always marked by certainty or clarity. Sometimes, the most meaningful periods of your life will be the ones where you feel most uncertain about your direction, most questioned about your choices, most aware of how much you don't yet understand about yourself or your purpose. Frankl discovered something counterintuitive about these periods of uncertainty. Rather than being obstacles to meaningful living, they often signal that you're ready for deeper questions, more authentic choices, greater alignment with who you're becoming rather than who you've been. The restlessness you feel when your current life no longer fits quite right isn't a problem to be solved quickly. It's an invitation to listen more carefully to what wants to emerge. Think about the times in your life when you felt most unsettled, most unsure of your next steps. Perhaps you were in a relationship that felt safe but no longer inspiring. Maybe you were successful in work that no longer challenged or engaged you, or you found yourself going through familiar motions that once brought satisfaction but now felt hollow precede the most significant. These periods of questioning often growth. The discomfort you feel isn't evidence that something is wrong with you. It's evidence that you're alive, that you're continuing to evolve, that your capacity for meaning is expanding beyond what previously satisfied you. The key is learning to sit with this discomfort without immediately rushing to eliminate it through distraction or hasty decisions. Sometimes the most meaningful thing you can do is simply acknowledge that you're in a period of transition, that the old ways of finding purpose may no longer serve you, that you're being asked to trust a process of becoming that you can't fully control or predict. This requires a particular kind of patience, what Frankl might have called existential patience. Not the patience of passive waiting, but the patience of active listening, of remaining open to possibilities you haven't yet considered, of trusting that clarity often emerges through engagement rather than through analysis. You practice this patience when you resist the urge to force solutions before you've fully understood the questions, when you allow yourself to explore interests that intrigue you even if you can't see where they might lead, when you have conversations that matter to you even if they don't advance any obvious agenda, when you pay attention to what energizes you and what drains you without immediately needing to reorganize your entire life around these observations. Sometimes this exploration reveals that small adjustments in your current circumstances can restore a sense of meaning and engagement, a shift in how you approach your work, bringing more creativity or connection to familiar tasks, a deepening of existing relationships through more vulnerable and authentic communication, a commitment to learning something new that challenges you in ways you've been missing. Other times, the exploration points toward more significant changes, a career transition that better aligns with your evolving values, relationships that need to be restructured or sometimes ended to make space for greater authenticity, living situations that no longer support the person you're becoming. The wisdom lies in distinguishing between changes that emerge from genuine growth and changes that represent escape from necessary growth. Sometimes what feels like a need for external change is actually an invitation to internal development. The dissatisfaction with your job might be asking you to bring more of yourself to your work rather than to find different work. The restlessness in your relationship might be calling you to greater honesty and vulnerability rather than to a different partner. But sometimes external change is indeed what's needed. The challenge is learning to sense the difference, to recognize when your circumstances are genuinely no longer aligned with who you're becoming, and when they're simply reflecting your own need for internal shifts. Frankl understood that this discernment develops through practice, through paying attention to the subtle signals your inner wisdom sends you, the activities that leave you feeling energized versus depleted, the relationships that bring out your best qualities versus those that leave you feeling diminished, the environments that support your growth versus those that constrain it. This isn't about pursuing only what feels easy or immediately rewarding. Some of the most meaningful experiences require effort, challenge, even temporary discomfort. Rather, it's about learning to distinguish between the discomfort that signals growth and the dissatisfaction that signals misalignment. Growth-related discomfort has a quality of aliveness to it. You might feel nervous about taking on a new challenge, but there's excitement underneath the nervousness. You might feel stretched by demands that require you to develop new capacities, but there's satisfaction in rising to meet them. You might feel vulnerable sharing more of yourself authentically, but there's relief in being known more fully. Misalignment, on the other hand, tends to feel flat or agitated. It's the dissatisfaction that comes from not being asked to give your best, from relationships that don't allow for authentic expression, from work that underutilizes your capacities or conflicts with your values. Learning to read these subtle differences helps you navigate toward greater meaning without falling into the trap of constantly seeking easier circumstances. It helps you recognize when persistence and commitment will lead to deeper satisfaction, and when change is genuinely needed for continued growth. As you lie there tonight, feeling the day's tensions gradually releasing from your shoulders, consider bringing this quality of gentle discernment to your own current experience. What aspects of your life feel aligned with who you're becoming? What areas feel like they might be calling for attention or adjustment? These aren't questions that require immediate answers or dramatic action. They're simply invitations to increased awareness, to noticing what your inner wisdom is trying to tell you about the direction of your growth and development. Sometimes, the most meaningful thing you can do is simply pay attention to these subtle signals without immediately acting on them. Allow them to inform your choices gradually, naturally, as opportunities for alignment present themselves. Trust that your growing awareness of what energizes versus depletes you will naturally guide you towards circumstances and relationships that better support your authentic expression. This organic approach to meaningful change feels different from change driven by external pressure or comparison with others. It emerges from your own deepening self-knowledge rather than from ideas about how your life should look or what success means according to others' definitions. Tonight, as sleep begins to draw you into its gentle embrace, rest in this quiet truth that Viktor Frankl discovered in humanity's darkest hour and offered as a gift to all who would listen. The meaning you've been searching for isn't waiting somewhere in your future, hidden behind achievements you haven't yet reached or circumstances you haven't yet arranged. It's here, woven into the fabric of this very moment, emerging through your willingness to remain present, to choose thoughtfully, to engage authentically with whatever life places before you. Your search for meaning is already meaningful. Your questions about purpose are already purposeful. Your commitment to living consciously, even when you don't have all the answers, is itself a contribution to the larger human story of awakening and growth. And in this gentle recognition, you can finally rest knowing that tomorrow will bring fresh opportunities to practice what we've explored together, to choose presence over distraction, authenticity over approval, service over self-absorption, one quiet moment at a time.